It's time to stop dealing and start demanding. It's time to stop being PC and start being transparent and authentic. It's time to get real. Prepare yourself. It's time for Crazy and the King.
Welcome to another episode of Crazy and the King. You're going to hear one voice and only one voice. This actually is the first time that Crazy and the King is going to be released without my trusted pod partner. Julie is out doing big things, and I really thought about whether or not I wanted to try to imitate her voice. Figured that wouldn't go over too well. And then I said I wanted to have a conversation with Julie, you know, kind of like ask a question and then be silent. And then have that conversation like, oh, Julie's talking to me, but you all really couldn't hear Julie's voice. But then I said, that sounds real stupid. So we decided against that as well. So I said, what we will do is just simply be who we are. I'm not the craziest, the wildest person in the world. That's her thing. I'm just going to play my role. We're going to make sure that we have an incredible episode, as we always do. I have a fantastic guest. We're going to do some talking, and normally we would talk. Julie and I, we'd start the episode off, and we talk about what it was that we did in the previous week, or what we'd done in this particular week up to this point. We talk about maybe an event that we did. Shout out to the folks at Clear Company. An amazing time last week with them in Boston. I got to tell you, you all are going to be looking forward to a really interesting release from them in Q4. Had an incredible time at their conference, but we're not going to do any of that. We normally grab some articles. I could talk about the soccer announcer that was fired for using openly racist comments on the air. I could talk about our administration and some of the things that they are doing in the workplace. I could talk about some of the research that recently came out that said that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it works well for other people, not just for the people being polled. I really thought that was interesting. But, because I don't have Julie, I just said, forget it. We won't do any of that. What we will do is we'll spend some time talking live. And so what we did, we went out and we got a head ringer. And so I am interested in this conversation for a number of reasons, and I'm going to allow my guests, or actually not allow, but encourage my guests to share some of those reasons why I'm excited that he's going to be on. We got today, Julie, unfortunately, you are not here, but we got Mr. Cory Eustice from Weedmaps. He is the head of talent acquisition over at Weedmaps. So, Cory, welcome to Crazy and the King. How are you, good brother?
I'm doing good. Should I wait for the headringer to join us? Because I don't think you're talking about me.
Oh, no, we talking. We straight up talking about you, man. Oh, yeah, you can wear all of that, and if you need to pop your head up a little bit, it's all good. Just stay with us, man. Just put it in your hand and just prop it up. Man, listen,
live up.
That's it. So, the good part, tell folks about the fact that both of us, we have roots in the center of the country. But at this particular point, we're on opposite coasts. Talk a bit about Cory's roots and how you even got into the world of recruiting. And then we'll work our way up to Weedmaps and talk about some of the incredible work you're doing over there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know by the roots, they're talking about the center, aka the best part of the mid-best, right?
You better tell them.
That's where all the good people come from. So yeah. I was lucky enough to get born on the West Coast. So I got some of the California laid backness, and then moved to the Midwest when I was about 9, in the great state of Iowa. Go Hawks. Currently ranked number 19, maybe 17 now. But man, got the Midwest values and the morals of bumping into somebody and saying hello, not excuse me. So I mean, falling into recruiting came from, I think it was always kind of meant to be. I've always loved helping people, and I've always loved talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a science-based person in my head and faith in my heart, and trying to understand how people work, trying to understand how they interact with one another, what makes them tick has always been a fascination of mine. And so I actually went to college started as a biochemical engineering major, switched over into psychology, and then graduated pretty much because I met the girl of my dreams, who's now my wife, and wanted to get out of college versus going to get my doctorate, which would have been like maybe 4 years ago I would have finally graduated. So
Yep.
I don't need that.
Yeah.
And kind of fell into recruiting. Like, they found me, the first agency I ever worked for, and the only agency I've ever worked for that matter, found me on Monster.
Okay.
If anybody even uses that anymore.
So actually, so let me ask you, were you
old school
actually,
ATS.
so let me ask you, Cory, were you on Monster looking for a recruiting role? Was your resume in that repository? Okay, go ahead.
It was in the repository, but I was looking for sales or financial planning, to be honest.
All right. Okay.
And so I actually had 2 offers. I had one for this agency and one for a financial planning and or investment banker. And I basically said, all right, this job is going to be controlled by what other people think of me, as in the investment banking one, like how much money I make for people, who just all the stuff that goes along with that. Like, I don't need to go into it because I have a lot of friends that are that, but there's a lot of stuff that goes with it, just like a lot of stuff goes with recruiting. But from a recruiting standpoint, they were like, you have an uncapped commission, you get to make what you want, you get to do what you want and help people. I was like, that sounds good, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And fell into it, just fell in love with it. And now here we are 10 years later.
10.
So 10 years later, it'll be 11 in March.
So how much time did you spend at the external agency before you went corporate?
So I was there for 6.5 years, almost 7, and went to a startup after that. That was actually one of my clients. Just typically how most agency works is you go to one of the clients that you're helping already to help go hypergrowth. It didn't work out like a lot of startups, but ended up at SpaceX through a person I had met at a conference who's a great talent person. Her name's Leah May. She's up in LA now. She's great. And she hired me on at SpaceX, spent about a year there after about almost 2 years, or a year and a half at the startup. And then came through SpaceX for about 10, 11 months, and then ended up here. When I got a phone call from a friend up in the Bay Area that had a mutual connection that just happens to be my boss now. So
I feel like Lars Schmidt used to work for SpaceX. Am I right on that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
Dude, okay, so I was going to ask you.
My time.
Okay, I was going to ask if paths crossed. All right, cool. So listen, if you are hopping on Twitter wondering who we are having a conversation with, and you want to get visuals, and you want to be able to follow the work that's being done over at Weedmaps, you can find Cory on Twitter at Cory Eustice. That's CoryEustice, Cory Eustice, all one word, on Twitter, and he's fairly active.
That's how we met, right?
Say it again.
That's how we met, right?
That's absolutely how we met. Tell people about that. What was it about me on Twitter that made you feel like we needed to connect? What was going on in your mind?
Pretty sure that Aaron Wilson was our mutual point of connection.
Oh yeah, shout out to Aaron.
Yeah, homie. So we had been chatting for a long time about D&I and a lot of different stuff, and he was like, "Yo, you should follow this guy named Torin." And I started looking at it, and I started following you, and then I started liking what you said. Started liking it. You threw out a couple of appreciation tweets, and follow back, and then we started talking, and then we ended up at the same conference together, got lunch, shared some jambalaya, if my memory serves me correct, and some sweet tea.
Yes.
That place was amazing, by the way.
That was the bomb.
Super good. Some really good cornbread too.
Hey, and you know what? Speaking of,
the
conference, you remember that brown building that we walked by, that crazy architecture that we walked by?
Yeah.
So we won't even go into it on this pod, but needless to say, found out who actually owned that building, and they actually had a bit of drama a couple of weeks ago. The owner of that particular architecture, it's a bomb building. I wish I had the name of it right now so that I could point people to it. Maybe I will put that in the show notes. But you're absolutely right. We did. We absolutely enjoyed lunch. We actually left the conference. We were at the Greenhouse Open event this past June up in New York City. I love Daniel Tate.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Karen and the rest of the team, they just do an incredible job. They pulled together an incredible event,
Yep.
long list of just talented and informative and energized, engaging speakers. I just feel like it was really, really wonderful. But it was also wonderful to be able to spend some time with you after we had been, popping back and forth via Twitter. I want to go back to something that you said. You spent some time external. You went inside of the startup. The startup, it didn't work. Think about that now. Could you go back into that startup? I'm not saying what you did after that, but that particular one that was once your recruiting client that you went to work for. Do you know enough now that you could have gone in and helped them to make a difference from your perspective?
I mean, I definitely would have done some things differently.
Like what? Because what that suggests is that there was a possibility that the importance of building teams was there. It doesn't change the business model and what we would have wanted the founders to do and the CTO to do. I know there are a lot of moving parts, but from a building high performing team perspective, are there some things that Cory knows today that would have helped him, 8 years or so ago?
Absolutely. So first thing, I would have definitely come in with a little bit smaller of a stick.
Okay.
I came in knowing that their hiring process was pretty broken and knowing exactly how to fix it, when in reality, what I should have done is sat down and taken what I thought we should do, but talk to everybody and ask questions and ask, well, what's the pain points that you're finding? What do you want this company to look like? What do you want this hiring process to say about us as a company? And then whether we got to the same place or got to a different place, it would have been a place together versus a place that was dictated by me.
Yeah.
Which always, fellowship is always way easier than everything else. It's like, it's what's the old saying, like you get more bees with honey.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely true. And so would have 100% asked more questions. We hired fast because we needed to. And I think we still would have done the same thing, but I would have been a little bit more deliberate about how we really rated people and how we set it up. Sometimes I felt like we hired people based on more how we got along versus how good they actually were. And I hadn't really understood yet how to set up a completely or pretty close to completely objective hiring process and being able to counteract bias and understanding what that really looks like. Understanding that bias is a biological thing that literally keeps us alive on a day-to-day basis. But unconscious bias is when you start connecting it to things that just doesn't have anything to do with each other because society tells you, or you heard it, or a TV show, or whatever it be. We've definitely done some different things about that. And I think I just would have slowed down. I usually am a person that trusts my gut pretty quickly. And I've been going through some pretty deep mindfulness exercises to understand why I'm making those decisions and what they are. Not whether they're the right or the wrong, just why I'm making them, to make sure that I can either continue to do the same behavior or change it up to get a little bit better, or just get rid of it altogether because it really isn't benefiting anybody except me.
So when you talk about coming in with a smaller stick, smaller swing, when you acknowledge some of that prejudicial hiring, if you will, bottom line is I liked an individual and I'm pulling the lever on them because I like them more than what they're capable of. Is that synonymous with bro culture? Were you a victim of that? Some years ago, were you a victim of bro culture, or was it just the fact that the bias was there and you didn't acknowledge it or you ignored it?
So I wouldn't say ignore. Like, I think there's a combination. I think that one, yes, victim, created bro culture, absolutely. The other piece is that it was my first shot at the external or going internal. And I wanted to make it work. I really believed in the company. I still believe in the company. I still believe in the people that we hire. I still look back and think we did some great things. But I think that sometimes I put my own prerogatives or how this might make me look over other things. But at the same time, of also just being like, when you have the title of head of talent in the room and everyone asks you a question, you have that imposter syndrome for a minute. And I even struggle with that today of like, I'm supposed to know the answer to X, Y, and Z because it's a
Yeah.
talent based question when
Yeah.
I can just say, you know what? Let me noodle on that for a second. This is my first thought, but let me get some more to give actually succinct understanding of what we're actually talking about so we can actually think about a solution to this problem or a path forward or whatever it be. It's not always the first to answer and it's not always the best answer, so to speak. Like sometimes it just does take a little deliberation and really understanding that you are not always the person with all the answers, even if it is your subject matter.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So talk about weed maps now. You know, we've grown, you've had a number of experiences, at least a couple that I know of. But let's
Yeah.
focus on weed maps. You know, what is it for those that don't know? Tell us what weed maps is and does, because I think that once they hear it, they too will find it interesting that the team is growing at the rate that they're growing right now.
Yeah, so I just looked at the numbers today. We'll have 233 new people starting this year,
Yeah, good stuff.
which is a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So we are the largest and leading technology and software infrastructure provider in the entire cannabis industry. We build a cloud-based software solution that handles sale, logistics, and ordering solutions to enable customers to scale their cannabis businesses across the globe. Pretty much anything and everything that has to do with cannabis, except for actually touching it. We don't touch the product in any way, shape, or form. We're closer to something like it was like a Salesforce versus an Amazon.
Yeah.
So we built some pretty cool stuff. All mobile enabled. We launched our order platform yesterday at 420. Started getting good traction. So things are super, super exciting right now. And we are growing, pun intended, like a weed. So
Yeah, you know what? And that 420 launch was purposeful by design, correct?
of course it was. Just like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
hit the gong, just like we hit the gong every day at 420 across the entire buildings.
yeah. So where'd the idea come from for weed maps? You know, when you think about the fact that states are still going through and battling with legislation, when you think about where the federal government sits on this right now, you all have a really, really big head start on the amount of data that's been collected, the ability to be able to predict where these organizations are going, as you stated a moment ago. You're the back office to a degree for companies all across the globe. But where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so the idea came from a guy named Justin Hartfield, who's our chairman, who's chairman emeritus now. He was at UCI and basically was like, I
What's
need it.
UCI, Cory? What's UCI?
Yo, UCI is the University of California, Irvine, which
Got
is
it.
actually one of the top schools in the country now.
Okay.
I think one of the top public schools like in the entire country, maybe
Okay.
even top. So Justin basically was like, there's nowhere to understand what like dispensaries are starting to come around, medicinal cards, things like that, and was like, there's no place to understand where to get your marijuana and what's good and what's not, and different reviews. So we started out building like that, much like a Yelp of weed, and then it slowly morphed into what it is today.
So what is it today? You know, when you think about being that back office and providing, vendors all around the world with support, is there a part of the platform that they lean on the most? Is there an area where you all are capturing data and you're looking at it and you're saying, "Wow, this is really where folks need us to be"? What does that R&D look like?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely looked at, I mean, our core platform is our most mature platform. So that's what you'd see if you go on to weedmaps.com or to our app or our mobile app. Which is basically where do I find my cannabis? And it's not just recreational, it's medicinal. There's CBD creams, there's all kinds of products now. Order deliveries, like I said earlier, And we have 11 years of consumer buying history of like how they look at where they go, why they look at the products that they do, how they look at the products that they do. So we have a lot of insights that we can help inform dispensaries and brands on, and lots of places that we can still go and lots of things we can still do. So weed right now, like we're really, like I said, the backbone and that back office of the entire cannabis industry. Something actually, I don't know if you saw the press release about it that I thought you might be interested in. We launched a Weed Map social equity program.
Okay.
Which is specific to bring inclusive minority participation in the cannabis industry. So we launched a program basically aimed at supporting entrepreneurs in minority groups to specifically help them obtain licenses, get professional development, and receive valuable compliance resources in our software at the end of the day to really support minority entrepreneurs and providing free advertising for their licensed businesses, which right now to get into the weed game, dispensaries, it costs money and a lot of it. And depending on the city you're in and the state you're in, it could cost which hands are trying to grease up the most.
Yeah.
And so we were basically like, yeah, why are the people that, if you look at historically, you look at people that, I mean, I think the state of New York had a huge thing in it with the last governor's race, but just minorities versus white people. Like if I got arrested and you got arrested in New York, it'd be a very different crime, right? And that's not okay. And that's not okay in any way, shape, or form. And the fact that it's treated differently from a social equity standpoint, it shouldn't be. And that's what it is right now. And so it'll just perpetuate the same problem that already exists in the housing community or the pay disparity bans or anything else that you can look at the hot button right now of social equity. It all rolls back to all the same stuff. And so what we can't keep doing is having the same problem persist. And right now, even though cannabis has been around for centuries, right now is a unique time in the history of the development of the cannabis industry itself. Is that if you look back, like, man, I wish I would have bought a house in Laguna Beach like 50 years ago. Well, this is that opportunity right now for these people.
Yeah. So let me ask you then, when I listen to what you mentioned there in the press release, I think about what Postmates did when they were having the ICE raids and, individuals,
Oh yeah.
And so they, on their platform, they would actually provide, here are some of the steps. These are things that you can do that are legal and well within your rights. And so when you think about that advocacy and that support that that Weed Maps is trying to provide with underrepresented minorities inside of these spaces, are you all doing policy work as well? Do you have a team that's addressing policy work? What are you doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a government relations team that's pretty essential and crucial to a lot of cannabis legislation that's been passed across the country. I can't go into detail on all of it, but just know that like we definitely are there. We're fighting social equity programs right now as far as incarcerations go. We're working to reverse those things. Like these are all things that are in the back and always like the way government relations work, it's all done in the shadows, unfortunately, but we're there. Like we are there. We are pushing it in the right direction and we are there for the right reasons.
Launched in 2008, Weed Maps really is driving the cannabis industry. They have their core Weed Maps product. They have a brands section. They have a menu section. And then, of course, they have an area where you can get news and different information like Cory just alluded to there. I really brought you on in part because of the space that you're in. I don't think that it's talked about enough. I still think that it's one of those areas where some people feel like it's off limits.
Yeah, it's so true. You don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's the thing at the party that you're like, if we're at a party together and like, you're like, yo, I want to talk about this thing. And then your friend's like, hey, you know what? I got some really good weed. Wait, you smoke?
Yeah.
What?
Then
all of a sudden it's like, dude, I've been smoking for like decades. It's like, incredible. Oh, geez, all these things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so I really felt like, it was overdue that we had you on, and I'm glad that you decided to do it. But another reason why I decided to have this conversation with you is because you care about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You've already hinted to it twice in the conversation I just actually moved by it because I wanted to save it for now. I wanted it to be, a part of the last aspect that we touched on. But why is it important to you? And let that take you right into the 8 Mile concept that you have with your recruiting team.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, look, point blank, diversity and inclusion is important because it's what it means to be a human. Like as human beings, we are supposed to accept and be loving of one another. Like full stop, right there. The way that society has pushed down this and that, like across the world, like it's just we got off track a long time ago, like a long time ago. And I know we don't
Well,
have.
some would argue with you, Cory, that we've never been on track, to be quite honest, but go ahead.
Well, I would say it depends what you believe, right?
Okay.
Like if you go all the way back to the beginning of time and you believe in that almighty Bible book, then I think we're on track for a little bit and then we fall a man real quick. So I think that it comes from a place like it comes from one that you just need to be a great human always and lead with that. When it's hard for me because I feel like I am a white male. I grew up with white privilege. I grew up in a middle income, middle America house. I get it. Like I understand what those things are. And I think that a lot of times, and we talked about this a lot over lunch, is that people don't want to talk about it because they feel like they're not capable of doing it because I am white, so I shouldn't be talking about other people. But in reality, I'm the person that needs to be fighting the most for everything else, or just as much, I should say, than everybody else, because we can help push where it needs to actually be pushed on and not be afraid to have those tough conversations and be okay to accept and have anger on us or frustration or guilt and all those things and understanding that they're there, but not letting them paralyze us to not do anything about it.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. Talk about that 8 mile concept that you all have.
Yeah, so the 8 Mile thing comes from when I was at the agency side, we would talk about basically talking to hiring managers and talking to candidates specifically. And my boss would always say crystal ball. And I'm like, what does that even mean? I was like, are you Miss Cleo? And he's like, no. And I'm like, this reference does not work. And so we started using the reference 8 Mile, just like in the movie 8 Mile,
Absolutely.
where basically you said, just like B Rabbit says, I'm going to tell you everything about me. I live in a trailer park with my mom, all these things. Now, what are you going to say about me?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at it from WeMap standpoint, we know we have our issues. We know we have our problems, just like every other company. And so we say, look, here's all the things wrong with us. Here's the things that we're doing to fix it. Here's the things we know we still can't and aren't able to fix. And here's all the stuff that people are going to say about us. Here's all the stuff that's true. We own every single piece of it. It's up to you on what you want to do with your career. Don't let other people influence it. And so like we understand that people are going to be influenced by their sphere of friends, family, and loved ones, or whatever it be. But at the same time, like we want people that are willing to push and be in the uncomfortable and literally live in that uncomfortable space, which I think is a lot of the place of what we've talked about, like with D&I, like being comfortable in the uncomfortable helps push it to be more comfortable. I just use the same word a lot, but like that's what you got to do. Like if you're doing things from the right place and understanding it's not always going to be done right, like there's a difference between impact and intent. And if you can understand those two things and understand that even if your intent's great but your impact is incorrect, you can work to change the impact to make sure the intent sticks. And that's what's left of people.
Yeah. I use the phrase "my dear" in referring to a young lady at a well-known organization, Alphabet, and it didn't rest well with her. She was offended. She was offended by that, and by all means, I meant it. Like I literally, meant it. In a way that was respectful, endearing, professional, if you will. But it just didn't land the right way. And so naturally I had to make sure that I apologized, and I had no problem apologizing whatsoever, which is in part, something that you referred to a moment ago. We have to be uncomfortable with that uncomfort. We must be able to live in that. But in living in such, we are able to push to new heights that we really had never seen before. I want to make sure that I understood what you and our listeners understood what you were saying. And for anyone who's kind of jumping in the middle, Cory Eustice, head of TA with Weed Maps. You can find him at Cory Eustice on Twitter, EUSTICE. You can find Weed Maps at Weed Maps. weedmaps.com, weedmaps.com. So Cory, the 8 Mile concept really is around transparency. And as a candidate, if I'm dealing with one of your recruiters or hiring managers, what you're saying to me is that you will get in and share with them. If it's a technical interview, you'll talk about applications or parts of the tech stack that are not just up to par, or that are perhaps running too slow, or, missing, some dynamicism. I don't know the word for that. But you will reveal that. You will reveal to your business development candidate or your marketing candidate aspects that may cause them to pause. And have you all ever, does feedback or does notes tell you all that has worked against you at any point in the past?
I'm sure it's worked. I mean, nothing's ever done perfect, I would say. And so what we strive for is to be able to leave. Someone walks into the interview process of Weedmaps, they leave it better. Whether that means they leave it with a job or they leave it better knowing that they know how to get their next job. I've been fortunate to not have to interview a lot, but when I do, it's still broken. Like, people still ask you, I know exactly what they want to hear. They ask you the question of where you're going to be in 5 years or why this role and all. Like, sure, those things matter to an extent, but the reality is just that's not the way that the world works anymore. People aren't at the same company for 10, 15, 20 years. I wish they were. But it's at a place where we are trying to give transparent feedback to make sure that people can get better. Because the one thing that I've always heard from every candidate I've ever spoken to, I hate companies that don't tell me why. They just say, hey, we decided to go with another candidate, or hey, you're not a good fit. Thanks, bye. It's like I just invested hours of my time that I could have had with my significant other, my kids, whatever it be. And now I'm in a place where I don't know actually what I did wrong, so I can't get better in the next interview. And it goes back to what I said earlier, like being comfortable with who you really are. Like, there's a lot of people that are unfortunately not in that place yet, that they haven't come to grips with, like, it's okay to not be perfect, because nobody is, right? And really being okay with that, and then looking at yourself from an objective standpoint to be better. Sometimes we do need a little like kick in the butt. Sometimes we do need to be told kind of what we're not good at. And what we're here to try to do is always giving that transparent feedback for both good and bad. Like, when we hire people, we tell them the same stuff that they messed up on. Like, look, you messed up on these things. We're still hiring you, but here's what you need to work on when you come in. Because you're getting into a relationship and it needs to be transparent. You need to know what's going on. Now, have there been tough conversations where maybe a candidate's great, but they actually don't fit the team because they're not the nicest person to be around? Absolutely. And do we give them feedback? Absolutely. And is it super hard? 100%. Really hard. Because it's easy when it says, hey, you didn't do long division correctly, right? Because it's objective. But when it's like, hey, you actually showed some arrogance throughout the interview, and a couple of our interviewers actually picked up on it, and here's the things that were said. And we always give a chance to talk about it and talk through it, and we will always also give second chances if we feel that it's necessary.
I got 2 questions for you before we close out. So share with me how the 8 Mile concept has helped around the D&I effort initiative in the organization.
How it's helped specifically with D&I is just that people understand that we are transparent. Like, we're not the best at D&I right now. Like, cannabis is a lot like the tech industry. Like, it's heavy male dominated right now. We are doing a lot of things. I would not say everything we can yet, to push that further down. And so what it has done is that we're transparent about it. We're not like, yeah, we're focused on this and this and this. Like, look, here's the things we're focused on. We're not good at these areas right now. Yeah, you're going to be the first person XYZ on this team, or this, that, and the other. Like, we do a good job of making sure that we're getting at least diversity on every single panel for our interviews. What I do know is that we do a great job of, from the people that I've talked to, I know there's been some bad seeds that have since they're not here anymore, but the vast majority, there's not a lot of people that I ask, what's it like to be this at Weedmaps? And they like, I actually don't remember what it's like, because I just think I'm at Weedmaps. And that's what I want to hear. But I want to hear that from everybody. So until I can go ask somebody, what's it like to be a woman at Weedmaps? What's it like to be a person of color at Weedmaps? What's it like to be whatever else? That it's not, you know what, this is how it feels. It's you know what? I forgot that I'm even this at Weed
Yeah.
Maps. I just feel like another person. Like that's the goal. And we're not there yet by any means whatsoever. And I think that's the transparency where it helps, is that we're just honest about it. Like we're not perfect and we're trying to do all the things we are. But we're still going to mess up. But that's okay because we know where it's coming from the right place.
Sounds like it is. How would you close the conversation today? As an organization, you're leading TA, you have some things on the vision board that you and leadership are working on. I'm excited to hear about them later in 2020. But how would you close the conversation today? What piece of advice might you offer up to our listeners? What suggestion might you offer up to our listeners? What consideration? You can pick anything that you want, but how would you like our listeners to remember your time here with us at Crazy and the King?
So I have 3 quick hitters, I would say. So 1, we're in a unique industry, and there's a lot of unique industries out there. You got to find what's good for you and what you care about the most, not what somebody else is going to care about, because that's all that matters. You only got one life to live, so you might as well live it doing what you want to do. 2 is that if you're looking for a job, look for a job that you want to do and you'll be happy going to. I know that there's times where it's hard and you got to be desperate. Your desperation for getting a position and you have to take what's on the plate. I totally get that part of it, but do your best to understand what's the important things to you. My mom always told me, a lot of people say the grass is greener on the other side, but what I'll tell you, Cory, is that it's greener where you decide to water it. So if you want to focus on the things that matter to you, you should understand what those things are so you know where to water. And then the third piece is if you're a company out there and you're a TA person, you're hiring a bunch of people, focus on the person. Like at no point in the history of the world has a piece of paper been hired to do a job. Doesn't matter what school you went to, doesn't matter what company you work for. Does it help if you worked at certain places and gone to certain schools? Sure. Does it diminish that? Absolutely not. But that's not all of it. Like hire the person in front of you that you're going to want to come to work with, that takes stuff off your plate, that makes you more excited to come to work, that you can learn something from, and that makes your company better. If you focus on those things, the rest works itself out.
Crazy and the King, we try to do this thing each and every week because we are interested in making sure we usher you closer to a new definition around diversity and inclusion. We want to be a part of that informational, that vocal, that audible diet that better prepares you to build high performing teams and show up in the workplace and really be the whole self that organizations say that they want. Julie and I don't profess to know it all as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but what we do profess to be are committed. We are authentic, genuine, and absolutely committed. Cory Eustice with Weed Maps. I absolutely appreciate you taking some time to be on our podcast with us. And I absolutely mean it when I say that I'm going to check in with you in 2020 because I want to come back, when you've hired another X hundred of individuals and you've put some new checks and balances and processes in place. And I want to be able to talk about that. So we thank you for being on the show, good brother. I really do.
I appreciate you for having me, Torin. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So as I close, no name drops this week. We're going to do the show a little bit differently. I want to just kind of point your attention to workbetterday.com, workbetterday.com. It's an event here in DC. It's in their 3rd year. I'm going to be the MC for such. And we really, really want this to spread around the country, workbetterday.com. And if you're going to be in the Detroit area on next Tuesday, what I would say to you is hit me up because I'm going to be in Detroit. Can't tell you where I'm going to be. It's a private event for a bomb-ass company, but we are going to deliver some fire for some people in the TA space, about 300 individuals in the TA space. And then last but not least, I remind each and every one of you that I'm on SiriusXM, channel 126, 1 p.m. each and every Sunday. SiriusXM channel 126 at 1 p.m. Eastern every Sunday. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm Ghost.
Thank Thanks for listening to Crazy and the King. I'm Julie Sowash with my co-host, Torin Ellis. Follow us on social media, but you can also now find Crazy and the King on Facebook, at our website, crazyandtheking.com, or follow our hashtag like you have been. This episode was produced by me, Julie Sowash. Our music is by the amazing DJ Cells straight out of Baltimore. And if you like our podcast, please rate it and share it with a friend. See ya.